All right, well, welcome to our second workshop on body signals. So our topic tonight is boosting your immune system. So I learned a few things when we did this in January, and that is I didn't move much, which most of you that know me know that I like to move around a lot. So you might see me wiggling around the room a little bit more. Also, we did find out too that we didn't need to put the recording in there. We were able to just let live stream recording. So we will not have a backup. So if this does cut out, I apologize to all of you on the web, but otherwise should have been here. So it's interesting that we're doing flu season in February. In fact, it's kind of awkward because when you consider all the stuff that we're hearing now that the bird flu is back in some of the poultry plants, and we're still dealing with Omicron and the whole COVID thing. We really haven't heard a lot about the flu, but the basic concepts and principles that kind of has built this around this program is applicable when we just talk about immune function in general. So I'm not going to make any specific directed points at any specific type of flu or virus or cold, but just basically talking about immunity in general. And we tend to this time of the year, January, February, really be dealing a lot with sickness and disease. People push through the holidays. We talked about this last month. Everyone's dealing with holiday hangovers. They start coming back around, and then they start kind of crashing. And so we want to talk about how do we deal with the crash, because it's one of those things that happens literally like clockwork every January, February. So we're kind of at the, I guess, literally in the middle of February, just past the middle of February. So we're coming off the holiday highs, and then the crash and hangover in January. Now we're trying to deal with making sure that we boost our immune system, which again is not just good to deal with now, but just in general. So getting used to my notes here. So let me ask you a question. Do you think as a nation, are we healthy or sick?
Sick.
You guys need time to think about it. That's okay. An interesting statistic I came across is that when you look at the top 40 industrialized countries in the world, we are 37 in overall health and wellness.
Yikes.
Yet we spend more money than any other country on the planet per person on healthcare. In fact, as much as 2 to 1 over number 2. And so you think with all that money and all the access to drugs that we have and all the medical procedures and all the hospitals and all the doctors, that we would be some of the healthiest people on the planet. But sadly, we're not. So one of the challenges that we have really is the paradigm of what is really health, right? Most people wake up in the morning and they go, I feel good, so they make the assumption that therefore I am healthy. And then if I have a pain, then therefore I must be sick. And so what we have to realize is that health is more than just that. And for those of you that are patients, we've gone through this process where we talked about health is the body functioning to the best of its God-given ability. And if there's any interference in that or any deficiencies, that can create some problems. And so we have to realize that health is more than just how we feel. Now, I like to use kind of a paradigm here. We talk about just health and wellness in general. And what we're looking at here is kind of a continuum. And as you kind of read through this and look at the slide, there's a lot of information. I want you to ask yourself, where are you on this continuum? That's number one. And then number two, how fast are you heading in that direction? So kind of this midpoint really is, I don't got anything going on. I don't really know what's going on. I'm kind of in that oblivious, no person's land, and so they're okay. What can happen, though, is that if we're not putting effort into being well, our body then starts sliding towards being sick. The first thing is a sign. So a sign isn't necessarily something that you experience. That would be a symptom. It's something that we can test for. So blood work, as an example, or taking an x-ray, or doing a spinal examination. We can identify if there's something not right in the body, right? Sometimes people wait till we get to the point where they start getting symptoms. So people come in the door, I've got neck ache, I've got headaches, I've got low back pain, my left leg is weak, right? So those kinds of things bring people into the office most of the time, and it's not usually because of the symptoms, but those symptoms then interfere with someone's ability to be able to do their regular daily activities. If we continue along down this path, the more symptoms, the more sickness, the more disability, and then unfortunately we move more towards that early and premature death. See, we're designed really to live to 100, 120 years old. Now, I know a lot of people that right now, based on our current world climate, would like to be done now. Let's not go down that path, right? But let's put some effort into, how can we start moving towards wellness? So these first couple steps here, the awareness education, that's what we're doing here today. And so I want to applaud you, one, for being here in the office, and then two, for those of you that are on the web and then continue to watch this, good for you, taking some time out of your day to really find out what are some things that you can do, we can do, us as a team can do to help you be well, short-term as well as long-term. The issue that we tend to find is that people think that they're just stuck with bad genes, there's bad bugs, or bad luck, and that's what brings them sickness. And people really, the challenge is they don't take responsibility for their health, right? So there's three things we talked about that are causing some of our health issues. Number one, just a lack of understanding of the paradigm of what health is. Number two, not taking responsibility. And so I want you to know that only about 2 to 5% of all chronic health conditions are really purely just genetic, which means 95%, I've heard as low as 80, but 80 to 90, 95% of what happens to you, you have some direct control over the choices, the habits, and the behaviors that you have. And so your habits and behaviors either have you going this way, right? So this is the I'm not exercising, all my food comes from a drive-through window, right? And I just have a negative outlook on life. Or I'm going to start looking at how I eat and start maybe moving and exercising once in a while, and then maybe being proactive and making sure my spine, nervous system, and overall body health are working well, right? You have a choice. We all have a choice. And so we don't get to blame our parents. Check it out the website. We want to always have information on the website as far as the next events and whatnot. So be looking for that. For those of you that are patients in the office, we'll have flyers and the like. So just be aware of that as well. So, but what we've been told is that if we have a symptom, that's bad. And if you watch TV, every other commercial is about something that you can take to hide the symptoms, right?
Yes.
So the theory is then if you have a headache, you must have an aspirin deficiency, right? But the reality is that there's a reason why you have a headache. In fact, there's probably been some signs that was there before, and it turned into a symptom. So for us, we like to honor that and really understand what's going on, because again, our culture is let's just do this. Let's just make it all go away, right? So we've got rid of the tip of the iceberg. Did you know that 90% of the iceberg is below the surface of the water? But here's what's interesting. 90% of the nervous system has nothing to do with symptoms. So let me say that a different way. Only 10% of the nervous system dedicated to pain and feeling. Lots of other stuff is happening. And so rather than just focusing on the part that we feel and experience, we want to look at the whole person, the whole body. That's why we like to do these workshops. So we're going to talk about kind of some three big ideas. Sickness is a part of health, your inner car battery, and that you don't get sick, you actually do sick. So when you think about our body being, let's use the word sick, right? When we get a fever, or if we eat something that we shouldn't and we throw it up, do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing.
Good thing, because our bodies are smart, right? It's an intelligent system, right? And so if the body's saying, hey, we need to raise the core temperature because we know that it's going to kill a virus or a bacteria, if we interrupt that body's natural ability, do you think it's going to help us get healthy faster or sicker faster? Sicker, right? And the same thing with, when we get a mucusy thing, right? sometimes having lots of sinuses and buildup can be a problem, but realize if we try to stop that off, the body's trying to eliminate and get rid of bacteria, viruses, and other kind of bugs. You ever notice when it's summertime and you might be out working in the yard, maybe mowing the grass or working the flower bed, and you get really stuffy, all that dust, your body says, listen, I need to get rid of it. So we get a runny, stuffy nose and we eliminate it. In case kids are watching, right? We want to be very honoring to the body's ability. So the body is smart, so we have to be careful about interrupting that process. So when we have a sickness or a body symptom, understand that it could be the body just doing what it's supposed to. I mean, think about it. When you get cold, you shiver. Warms you up, right? If you get stressed, your blood pressure raises. Make sure we got blood going to the brain, keep things going on. We'll talk about stress responses in a minute. What we have to understand, though, is that the immune system, our primary topic tonight, requires a lot of energy, kind of like a car battery, right? So when our immune system is being in the forefront and being active, it's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of focus for the body to be able to become healthy and well. And so we have to be very careful that we don't stress the energy levels of our body and try to work through or push through sicknesses. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. And then what we have to understand is, again, we don't just catch a bug. Oh, I caught a cold. Everybody hear that, right? Like, oh, there's one. Why would you catch it if you could, right? But so it's really when our bodies get run down that we're now not able to fight off the bacteria, the viruses, and whatever else is in our environment. So it's the choices, the behaviors, the lifestyle actually sets us up to do sickness. So what we want to talk about are really three key areas that we can put effort into to help our bodies become stronger. So we talk about a bonfire, right? So if you have a big bonfire, right, there's three key things that you need to have. You need to have fuel, you have air, and you have to have a spark to light the fire. So in this case, the fuel is what you eat. The air, again, that's moving, right? So when you breathe, you exercise, you get lots of air, right? And then the last one, the spark, how you think, right? Because a lot of what we do, the behaviors, the attitudes, the lifestyle, starts here, right between the ears. And then those are the other tools that we use then, the air and the fuel, for how we move forward on that. So let's take each one of these individually. Actually, let's take this slide first, and then we'll take each one individually, right? So it's the key is that you want to make sure that you're eating well, moving well, thinking well over time. So think about this. If we're putting positive effort into these three areas over time, remember that continuum we showed before? That's moving us this way down the path. But if we're not eating well, or not exercising or moving well, or we have terrible thoughts, then we're moving back towards the left side, towards premature death. So who wants premature death? Good answer, right? So by applying these things today, then helps us either recover from here and go back that way. Now here's the thing we have to understand. The faster we're moving this direction, or the longer we've been on this path, it's not like we can just, oh, I'm going to eat an apple today and I should be back over here. It doesn't work that way. And it's interesting too when patients come in the office like, man, I've had this problem for 15 years. I was in a car accident, fell out of a tree, whatever. And they expect it all to go away within a week or two. It's like, the body's not designed to work that way. The more damage over a period of time that you have, the more effort it takes to get it turned around. Now, that doesn't mean we can't get down here, but you have to understand, healing takes time. And so as we go through each one of these processes, understand that it's going to take time. One, to just develop better habits, and then two, give the body time to be able to adapt to those. So there's some basic do's, don'ts, and maybe slow down things. So kind of using the model of the stoplight here moving forward. So there's just some certain things that we just can't do if we want to be healthy. So if we're literally in the middle of doing sick, there's just some things we've got to stop doing. There's some things we need to change. There's some things we need to add, okay? So let's jump into the fuel. So eating. We do lots of workshops in the office, and we always talk about nutrition. It's like one of the top things that we have to address because, let's face it, we're moving towards 70% of the country being overweight and almost 35–40% of the United States being obese. So we need to make some changes. Remember, that's one of the comorbidities we talked about that are causing people to have other issues, right? And so we have some control over where we're going to go, but in many cases it starts with the fork. And that starts at the grocery store, right? But that starts in the mind. We're going to come back in a minute. So there are some basic required nutrients we know that we need to have. There's some essential nutrients we need to pick in. We also want to make sure when we eat, we're eating whole foods. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we have to be careful about toxic foods. Now, I've made this comment before, but when you go to the grocery store, if they have a health food section, you need to ask yourself the question, what's the store carrying in the rest of it? Right? If we have health food, does that mean that this is unhealthy food? Is it junk food? Is it food at all? Now, I'm obviously playing, but here's what I have to understand. I hear patients talk a lot of times about health food and junk food, but the reality is either food or it's junk. There really is no one or the other. Now, we have to be careful about the choices we make. And so we're not going to go real deep into that. Maybe we'll do a nutrition workshop here down the road. But this is a big thing that people don't realize. Now, when we start talking here a little bit about sugar and its effect on the immune system, that's going to be having a toxic burden on the person's overall health. So, correct things, the best things that you want to do as far as the correct fuel, as many vegetables as you want. Now, I want to qualify a little bit. Starchy vegetables, root vegetables, that kind of stuff, you really don't want unlimited of those. Green vegetables, go for it. As many as you can possibly eat. From a caloric standpoint, you can't eat enough vegetables. It's the volume that becomes the issue. It's like, I can't have another bite of lettuce, right? but you can have as many vegetables as you want. Clean meats. I have the word abundant there, but again, the key is clean meats. And we talk a lot about bioaccumulation, that if you have, for example, a conventionally raised pound of ground beef, it takes about 13 to 16 pounds of chemicals from the fertilizers and the pesticides in the fields and the antibiotics and the hormones that the cattle eat and then all the other stuff that they do to them. So 13 to 16 pounds of chemicals to make that 1 pound of beef, right? And so imagine then eating part of that hamburger and you're getting then the accumulative component of all those chemicals. The reason why and vegetables isn't that as big of an issue, you can't eat enough vegetables even if they've been sprayed to have as much damage as unclean meats. Now, please understand that our ultimate vision for all of us is to eat organic, with regards to our meats, grass-finished beef, free-range poultry, again, no hormones, no antibiotics. And we understand not everybody can just go and do that, but making better choices is the place we will start. So we always start with people, when you start changing the way that you eat, especially when you start looking at the budget, always start with the meats first, and then start changing some of the vegetables. And what you'll find is that there are certain vegetables you don't necessarily have to get organic. Bananas, broccoli of all things, they don't tend to spray them very often, which means that you don't have to buy the more expensive versions of those. A great resource also are farmers markets. I know that our farmers market just started back up. We've got our winter market. Obviously, there's not as much stuff as you're going to see in the middle of summertime, but fresh, you get to talk to the farmer, ask about their growing practices. The nice thing about the farmers market is what you'll find is that in talking with the farmers, they'll tell you, it's like, we can't afford to get certified being organic, but they can tell you how they raise their vegetables and how they process the stuff in the fields or how they're processing the meat that they sell. You get to have this relationship one-on-one with the farmer, and we've built over the years, my wife and I, relationships with a number of the people at the Beaverton Farmers Market, and it's fun. And it's kind of a fun little day. You just kind of go, you walk around, you get a little cup of coffee, organic, and go on your merry way. Some fruits and nuts and seeds, and again, starchy, and then the sugar. The sugar just crashes your immune system. When you eat sugar, it actually causes your immune system crash for like the next 5 hours. So let's rewind. Remember, we just talked about last month dealing with the holidays, and then imagine what you ate during Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and all the parties in between, right? How many 5 hours that you blew out your immune system over those holidays? So when we look at our plate, what we want to do is we want to ask ourselves, where's the plants, where's the fat, where's the protein? It doesn't necessarily have to be this type of proportion, but what you want to see here is it's mostly vegetables and low glycemic sugary fruits. So what's that mean? Berries, Granny Smith apples, lots and lots of lettuce, kale, spinach, avocado, broccoli, right? Clean proteins. And then what I should have put there is the word healthy fats. Not all fats are created equal. So vegetable oils, canola oils, not really good for you. Soybean oil, not so much that good for you. But things like medium chain fatty acids, so coconut oil or olive oil. And then there's a whole issue of quality, and we're not going to dive into that, but you get the idea. The healthier the fats, the better the body is going to be able to function. We need fat for our body to work. Our brain is mostly fat. In fact, if someone calls you fathead, thank them, because you want to have healthy fats in your brain, right? So just kind of some nuts and bolts here, the do's, right? So this is the green lights. Non-starchy vegetables, some fruits, clean meats, range-fed. In fact, if you can get a pastured egg, chickens that are pastured, as much free range as they want, healthy organic foods. Again, natural, healthy fats, some nuts and seeds. Let me qualify this raw, because when you roast them, you actually can damage the fats. And our body uses, again, the fats for our brain, but also every single cell in our body has a double layer of fats. So if we put bad fats in our body, then we're building bad cells. Think cancer. Right? And then lots of water. And again, filtered water is going to be your best way to go. And you can get something as inexpensive as a Brita or a pure filter. You can get whole house filters. You can buy bottled water. There's a whole issue with that I won't go into today. But again, water, an important thing. Things we just got to change. So we don't want to do lots of refined carbohydrates, right? Cereals, grains, anything that is or turns into sugar is what we want to watch for. Sweeteners. Now, by sweetener, I don't mean sugar. What I mean is the artificial sweeteners. Sweetener replacements like stevia, great things for you. Erythritol, xylitol, those are a sugar alcohol, so they don't have the sugar, the glycemic hit to the body like you would with regular sugar. Some people are sensitive to that, and xylitol is actually toxic to animals. So you have to be careful if you cook with that. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people where I was fine with xylitol for a while, and then all of a sudden I just got to the point where just my body doesn't process it very well. So you got to, the more you pay attention to your body, you also know kind of cause and effect. Hey, every time I eat this, I feel crummy. Maybe if I don't want to feel crummy, I shouldn't eat that, right? And so it's one of the things you get to do as you adult, as you kind of look at figures, cause and effect, maybe I should make some choices here. We talked about bad fats, dairy products. Most of the dairy that we'll find on the market is going to be full of lots of hormones. Now, there's a number of grocery stores around that have hormone-free, antibiotic-free dairy, which is great. What's also interesting, though, is if we take a step backwards and we look at cattle as a whole, and we look at, the dairy cows, right? And they've been hybridized so many times over the years that the type of the protein that's produced is not necessarily recognizable by the body. Where if you go back to like the ancient cow, they have a different protein, it's called an A2 protein, which our bodies are more likely to be able to process. Now, as we get older, we tend to lose some of the digestive enzymes that allow us to digest the dairy. So if you go for periods of time where you might cut dairy out and then you start putting dairy back in your diet, or you decrease it and then increase it, you might find that your body has a harder time with that. So just be aware that that's another issue. We're really the only species of the planet that drinks milk after we've been weaned. And so there's some people say you should never have dairy before or after you're a kid. And other people say you should be fine. Part of it's just kind of your own personal choices and lifestyle. It's the quality that's really the key with all of this stuff that we're talking about. Okay. Alcohol, again, anything that is or turns into sugar. Because as we just talked about, when you do and consume lots of sugar, cause the immune system to crash. And since we're talking about how to boost our immune system and how to be healthy, whether it's flu season or cold season or whatever illness season we're celebrating, right? We want to do whatever we can to help our bodies get as strong as possible so we can recover as quickly as we can. So a lot of people ask us questions about supplements. So, and with the whole COVID thing, it's like, well, I heard that if you take this, that, and the other thing, that you should be fine. or if you take the other thing, this and that, in a different order and different concentrations, and I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to talk about some generalities. So when we talk about just basic supplementation, what we have to understand is that the foods that we eat is pretty mostly deficient in a lot of the nutrients and chemicals and substances and vitamins that they had years ago. I don't remember the specific studies, but if you look at an orange today and you look at the nutrient quality of what it would have been 200 years ago, terrible. And so we're just not getting all the nutrients that we would in our foods that we would have a couple hundred years ago. So supplementation really isn't an option anymore. It's almost a necessity. And so we got to fill the deficiencies. And then when we talk about wellness supplements, there's just certain things in different people, sometimes at different phases of life, that we need to just give a little extra boost in certain body systems. And then again, when we have issues like we're talking about now with immune issues, there might be some things that we need to add a little bit extra to boost us through some of the stressful areas. So some of the big things, the primary three that I always talk about is a good healthy multivitamin, fish oil, and then vitamin D3. I don't remember the exact numbers. There's been a couple of studies that have come through and talked about how if you look at a number of the people that have been having issues with COVID, that their higher levels of vitamin D showed a lower risk of severe issues with regards to COVID. Now, like every study out there, someone can say, well, they did this with the numbers and they did that with the numbers. Don't want hate mail. The point is that we're finding more and more that our vitamin D levels in the United States are really, really low, typically speaking, for the people that are sick. We are so far north of the equator that we typically don't get enough sunshine, even in the summer, because we're all inside, that we don't get enough vitamin D. So again, adding that to our diet is going to be really, really important. And some studies have also shown, too, that if you have vitamin D levels at a certain level, you can actually decrease your risk of some cancers anywhere 50 to 80%. And so I think that's a good thing. Now, I'm a fan for testing versus guessing. So yeah, we sell vitamin D here, and I can give you a couple of recommendations about which ones to take. But the best thing to do is next time you're getting your blood work done, make sure you check your vitamin D3 levels. And then we have a number to play with, and we can utilize that information as far as where we want to go from here. Some things that we can add, especially when we start talking about cold and flu season or just sick in general, is probiotics, because that's a gut thing. So a lot of our immune system is also tied to our intestines. And then vitamin C. Vitamin C and sugar attach to basically the same receptors on the cell. So and the body likes to use sugar. So if we can give ourselves enough vitamin C, we can decrease the negative effects that sugar is going to have on our immune system. So Linus Pauling, years ago, Nobel Prize winner on for the vitamin C studies. So there's something to that. Some additional things, and again, starts getting outside of my realm of knowledge. So working with a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath can probably take down those paths longer, but people ask. So here's just a small list that I've made. Probably the top three are the most common ones that you may have been hearing about in the news the last year or so. And so they all have advantages. NAC stands for N-acetylcysteine. In fact, that's one of the things that we have in the office that we sell, because what we found is it really helps with lung health. And for those of you that were in the area when we had the humongous fires a year and a half ago, really frying people's lungs. And so that's something that really can help support recovery from that and dealing with some long-term damaging effects of that. Air. So this is movement. Our cells, our body requires movement. We have to move. We're designed to move. We're not designed to be on our phone all day long, surfing the web, or on the computer, or stuck at our desk, right? We need to move. Our body needs that movement. It helps move nutrients around the body, right? It decreases stress. Research has actually shown that exercising 30 minutes a day is better than taking not one, but 2 antidepressants. And the only side effects of exercising is that you feel better, you think better, and you get the idea. So there's no downside, except for those people that say, well, I'm going to move incorrectly. I've never exercised in my life, but I'm going to run a marathon tomorrow. You get the idea, right? So we have to be wise in this, but we got to start moving. And then when we're recovering from something, we also have to ponder, maybe we do need to take a step backwards a little bit. So being more aware of what's going on. So again, exercise is required. It also affects the neuroendocrine systems of the body. Also the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a real important thing that deals with eliminating some of the stressors from the body. So if we don't move, we don't circulate the healthy stuff that our body needs to fight the disease. We also don't circulate the nutrients that we need to have as easily, and it's just becomes a problem. So we don't want that to happen. So if we are dealing with a body signal, some sort of a health condition, cold, flu, or even an injury, right? Maybe we need to stop moving a little bit. So again, I just made this big case, we need to move, and yes, we need to move, but sometimes we need to also listen. So for most people, we need to get them to move. There are a few people out there that I can't get them to stop moving, right? And so please understand, you have to listen to your body, right? Just because you exercise 7 days a week for the last 2 years, if you're feeling run down, if you keep exercising 7 days a week, your body's not just going to get sick, it's going to completely crash. I don't know about you, but I don't have time to crash. I got too many things I want to do, need to do, like to do, have to do, so I don't have time to be sick. So I want to do everything I can for my own system to be as healthy as possible. So how I eat, how I move, sleeping is a big issue. We are supposed to sleep 7 to 8 hours a day. Some people need a little bit more, especially if they're recovering. Some people can get away with a little bit less, short periods of time, but we really need, at a minimum, a good 7 to 8 hours. It's not uncommon when we get sick or run down that we need to sleep more. Think of a little child, right? You get a 2-year-old kid that's a little run down, they just sleep. They go, oh, that's nice, they're recovering. But yet, for some reason, as adults, we think that we're immune to that. Our bodies still have to recover. In fact, it's a bigger body with that bigger car battery, right, that needs to put a lot of effort out. So we need to do the sleeping thing to give our body a chance to recharge. We only have so much energy. We don't want to crash. So sleep 7 to 8 hours. This one is a tough one for people, the electronic fast. Ideally, you should not be looking at a screen an hour before you go to bed. It's not just the blue light that's going to be affecting you, which is a big thing, but just the stimulation that your brain's going to be going through. So if you've got a TV in your bedroom, please get rid of it. It's because you watch it. I have so many people say, oh, I turned it off before I went to sleep. It's like, I know, but how many times did you fall asleep with it still being on? And let's go down a different path. Think of all the electromagnetic waves and stuff that you're then bombarding your body with. Your bedroom really should be that sanctuary of rest and restoration. So try to take all electronics out. I have my phone wrapped in a basically a sleeve that minimizes the EMFs and the radiation that comes off of it. I still have it on because that's our only phone that we have on at night. My wife actually puts hers in the room in airplane mode, right, just to minimize the effect. And then napping is actually not just for children. I'm a big fan of my naps. I had one today. I have one almost every day. Because I don't sleep for like 7 hours. Again, right? 15, 20-minute power nap, boom, off, ready to go. So good thing to do. To me, the thinking part sometimes is one of the biggest challenges people have. And when I'll tell you, I've done a number of speeches over the years, and I used to work with or be a part of Toastmasters. And I had a speech one time where I said, if I talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, you hate me. I want you to think about that. If I talk to you the way that you talk to yourself, you hate me. And yet we are told that we should love our neighbor as ourselves. Well, some people think, well, I can't love myself. It's like, well, no, actually, it's okay to love yourself, just not in an egocentric way. You need to love yourself enough to eat the right foods. You need to love yourself enough to move your body and get out and do things. You need to love yourself to have thoughts that honor the person you were created to be, and then honor the people around you for the people that they were created to be. We all have a unique genius. Just because your genius is different than your genius and different than my genius doesn't make that we're wrong. It's just that we're different. That's okay. Okay? So if we have poor thinking, it increases our stress hormones. That whole stress response that our body goes through actually puts our body in a point where we have a lower immune function. and it gets us out of our normal healing patterns. So what we have to understand then, healthy or being healthy is just normal. Again, health is the body functioning to the best of its God-given ability. Our body is smart. We talked about how different systems or body symptoms or body signals is normal, right? Having a fever, raising the core temperature to try to kill off bacteria and viruses, right? Throwing up because we ate something or we have something in our body we need to get rid of, right? That's normal. Our nervous system is the master system that runs and controls all parts of the body. Our spine, and as a chiropractor, I work with the spine because it's that shield of armor that protects and houses the spinal cord. So again, as the spine goes, so go the nerves. And that, I don't know about you, but do you think our current life environment is a stressful one or a peaceful one? Stressful. Is it getting better?
No.
Yeah. So we talked about the e-fast a moment ago. If we just stop watching the news and getting on social media, that can actually go a long ways to helping us deal with some of the stress. You know, go to lunch or coffee with a friend.
And
You have a
don't
neighbor.
talk politics.
And don't talk politics, don't talk religion, just find out about each other and love each other, right? So here's what can happen with the stress response. We went through this last month, right? The thing I want to point out though is the immune response gets stressed. It drops, it decreases. So in our world right now, with everybody being more and more and more stressed, causing our immune response to drop, do you see how that's setting us up for more and more sickness? We kind of get ourselves in that perpetual, I'm stressed, so I'm sick, but I'm sick, so I'm stressed, and I'm stressed because I'm sick, and then we have this whole cycle, and that's not a healthy thing. Don't spend more than 3 times. It doesn't work when you're teaching, right? So what we have to understand is that there's a normal response that we have, and it's, again, it's a smart thing for our body to do. But, you know, if you're running from a lion, which you don't do a lot right now in the United States, right? But that short-term stress helps us deal with whatever's going on, and then we move on, right? But so many people are under just a constant state of stress that it's throwing their whole bodies out of balance. So we've got to look at this. We've got to look at the 3 areas of the bonfire. What are we eating? How are we moving? And what are we thinking? And we got to interrupt the stress response by finding peace. There are 3 forms of stress that we talk about: thoughts, toxins, and traumas. So when we think about the thoughts, it's a lot of what we just talked about here before. When we think about the traumas, right, everyone thinks of the macrotraumas. We just watched the Super Bowl, right? We watched all the collisions. Some say that that's every time someone gets tackled, it's like getting in a car accident multiple times every game, right? But what's interesting is when you consider the stress and damage to the body through macrotraumas, it's only about 2 to 5% of the issues that happen. Which means there's a lot of microtraumas that occur. Does this look familiar? Maybe not you, but you might know someone that's always on the phone. It's invariable. Every time I walk in to do an examination, the person that's waiting for me, they're on their phone. No one just sits and just relaxes anymore. And I can be guilty of that as well too. But imagine the stress that I'm placing on my upper back and my neck as I'm on my phone. And I actually don't use it like that, but you get the idea, right? Or I'm on my computer. Spinal damage can become permanent in as little as 2 weeks. So whether it's a car accident or a sports injury or a fall or being hunched over a computer for long periods of time, one of the biggest struggles I've noticed with people since we've started working from home is that they're on their laptops. Well, they might have this beautiful ergonomic workstation at the office, so they're in their chair, everything's perfectly set up, right? And they go home and now they're on their kitchen dining table or on their coffee table and they're on their laptop, right? And they wonder why they have more pain in their neck and their lower back. That's just the microtrauma plus the emotional stress, right? So we're not helping ourselves at all based on our current situation. So we kind of need to look at, maybe we need to break some of the bad habits that we have about how we move. So when we talk about the spinal column, the vertebra, again, that's that shield of armor. And so when you consider the information that travels over those nerves, it's kind of good that it is protected, don't you think? So the brain is protected by that helmet called the skull. The spinal cord, the primary communication between the brain and the body, is protected by the spinal column. And then we've got the nerves that go out to every single part of the body and back again. So we want to make sure that that connection is working as best as possible. What can happen, though, is that we can have a process that the body goes through where we start to have an interference in that communication. I got a lot of information on here. You're not going to unpack all of it, but what can end up happening is if we get some sort of a stress or damage to the spine, the joints stop moving properly. We get some damage, perhaps. Inflammation or spasms can occur. So you can see we're starting to create a stress response in the body, which is going to be localized to where the damage is here, but also systemic because it's causing a systemic deal of stress. Remember that slide we just went over, right? So we start losing mobility. We start seeing the joints getting stuck, stress hormones. And what can happen over time then is we start to see disc degeneration, osteoarthritis begin to form. We got some herniated discs, bulging discs. Again, I'm oversimplifying the process here, but when we start having these effects on the body, it can create not just short-term inconveniences, but literally some long-term problems. And so our whole job here is to identify where these are in the body, restore the function of the spine, support it with the bonfire topics we just talked about, and now we're on a different path, that continuum of health we just talked about. So that nerve interference, again, is what we call as a subluxation. And the basic process is we have to work with the body's normal wisdom or innate intelligence to allow it to be able to heal. So how do you know if you even have a subluxation? Well, in our office, we do a number of different tests. We start by looking at your posture. We palpate along the spine and say, how much of the joints appear to be positioned? And then, are they moving properly? They're moving normally from side to side. What's the range of motion in all parts of the body? We also do computerized evaluations of the body. We even take x-rays of some of our patients because we understand if the spine is that shield of armor, if it's out of balance, it's going to stress how the nervous systems work. So everything we do here is going to take the body as close towards normal as possible. We do very unique care in our office, and we provide spinal correction work. And so we like to take it beyond just a basic adjustment, and we really identify how far away from normal, to the degree or the millimeter away from normal, is the body, and that everything that patients do for their health, either preparing for the adjustments or the very intentional adjustments or exercise at home, is trying to take them from where they are to as closest to where they should be. Now, it's not like bonking on the head and everything goes away, right? It takes time, but it's a matter of getting the body back on track. So one of the things we find too is that there's research that has identified that if you get adjusted in the upper back area, it actually improves your immune function for the next few minutes or so. 15 to 30 is what I've heard. So ideally what we would do is if a person's starting to feel a little bit run down, is we encourage you to get extra adjustments. Now, with our current climate, if we have extra body signals, sadly we have to ask you to be careful about coming in because of the exposure of the people. So fortunately, we're starting to see the waning of all the chronic illnesses or the viruses, and so hopefully that will start to pass. But if you're able to come in, extra adjustments can help the body recover faster. Breaking bad habits, so that's kind of that sugary stuff we just talked about. That's probably the big thing. Give yourself some time to eat, rest, and then do whatever exercises you can do if you're not trying to deal with resting. So here's the basic things that you want to do if you're already doing sick, right? So there's what you've done or what you can do to minimize the sickness, but if you've already crossed over into now you're doing sickness, here's kind of what you want to look at. So rest, sleep. So those are different, right? So naps, sleeping, get extra adjustments, watch out for stressful situations, sugar, gotta cut out the sugar, increase the water, healthy foods. Now, sometimes we're not hungry, right? Our digestive system wants to kind of take a break, let the body process stuff. So you hear people talk about soup, bone broth, chicken broth. It could be calming to the digestive tract. Again, maybe we need to add some extra supplements and give your body some time. In our current culture, we tend to just keep moving, not in a healthy exercise way, but just, I can't stop, right? But understand that if you keep pushing your body, you're going to crash. So you got to give yourself a chance to recover. So if you know of someone, so if your family's not getting checked, if you're not getting checked, if your neighbors or coworkers are not getting checked, getting a spinal evaluation and going through all these things we just talked about is really the best way to know how well the nervous system's functioning, and it's find out if there's something that they can be doing to help themselves be more resistant to getting sick. But more importantly, not dealing with this end of the continuum, but really set themselves up to be actually living that healthier life that we really all want. But sometimes we just don't know how to do that. Unfortunately, Dr. Google and all the commercials between the shows we're watching on TV don't really talk about this. It's all about how do we mask the symptoms. So we want to give people solutions. We want to help them restore the function of their spine. We want to teach them how to move. We want to teach them how to eat well and help them break bad habits that are setting themselves up for this in the first place. So if you aren't under care and you haven't been checked, don't put it off. One of the third thing that really causes people to be having health issues right now is that they just don't start. They wait. They hope it's going to go away. And I can't tell you how many times over the last almost 30 years of practice that I hear someone says, I thought it would go away. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And the longer that you suffer, the longer it's going to take to actually recover when you do start to get it fixed. So thank you all for being here. For those of you that are in the office, I know that we will be offering our supplements at a special promotion. Those of you that are on our email list will get a special email. I'm looking you to confirm that that's the case. So there'll be a special code that you can get. If you are not on our email list and you'd like to find out more about our office or about supplements, you can email the office. Just put it in the comment section, and then Alex will be checking for that. And then if you'd like to get checked, you can actually go on our website, for those of you that are not in the office, and actually schedule your appointment right there. You just pick the day, the time, give us your name and phone number, and we'll follow up with you, and we'll be happy to take care of you and your family. So with that, I'm going to sign off from the web. Thank you all for being here, and you can find this on YouTube and Facebook for ever. I don't know, until I delete them, I guess. Any questions?